screening and work out which is better than others. The overview of reviews I mentioned, and this is another project that we're just starting at the moment, which is looking at methods of pain relief and labour. Again, trying to get an overview of the totality of information about a single topic. And I think this is again going to be quite a challenging project, but I think a very important one. And these are the methods of pain relief that we will be looking at as part of this overview, also including challenged by Mary Newburn from National Childbirth Trust that immersion in water should be in there, and she's quite right, so that's going to be in there as well. So the link up with trials, finally, this is something I came across on the internet from somebody in Australia. Meta-analysis is a tool to allow people to become professors of medicine or surgery by plagiarising the work of others. Well, this is unfair on a number of different levels. It's not plagiarising at all, because the source of the data is acknowledged. But in fact, it's also unfair because actually there's a very close link between doing a systematic review and doing clinical trials. And in fact, these are some important clinical trials that have occurred in our specialty over the last 10 or 15 years. These trials were driven by people who were also Cochrane reviewers. And nowadays it's impossible to get funding for a clinical trial without being able to demonstrate that the question is important and that the question hasn't been answered already. And funders will need to see a systematic review either done by yourself as applicants or citing a review done by others to show that there is a valid question to be answered. But another part of this relationship between trials and systematic reviews is the importance of trial reports describing the totality of evidence. And Mike Clark, who is director of the UK Cochrane Centre but based mainly in Dublin now, has written a number of papers pointing out that a lot of trial reports in fact focus solely on the results of that particular trial and don't systematically discuss the results of similar studies. And just as an example of this is a study we recently reported. It was a study performed in Malawi, which is a country with which we've got close links. We did some work and showed very high incidence of prematurity in unselected population, rural population, with ultrasound dating. There were specially trained midwives who did the ultrasound scans, and we found an incidence of 20% of preterm birth. In the UK, that figure is about 7%. Very high burdens of all sorts of infection. We did a trial to see if antibiotic prophylaxis would help prevent the very high incidence of prematurity. And it didn't in our trial, but what we also did in the trial was to do a meta-analysis and include data from all similar studies of routine antibiotic prophylaxis. And what it showed is relative risk of 1.00, very tight confidence intervals 0.91 to 1.10, which is pretty strong evidence of no effect, that this is not the way that we should be trying to improve the outcome to prevent preterm birth. Important problem, but we need to be looking at alternative ways of trying to achieve that. So finally, just to mention a couple of strategic issues that I've already mentioned, the need, the kind of conflict between, if you like, the kind of UK agenda and international agenda. Our funding mainly comes from National Institute for Health Research, NIHR, who are obviously keen to see material that will help improve the quality of care within the National Health Service, but it's important at the same time that we're also very aware and sensitive to international issues that may be important. Volunteer versus in-house authorship. We've very much relied on volunteer authors throughout most of the history of the Cochrane collaboration, and we're enormously grateful to the enormous effort that people have put into this work, and we still very much encourage volunteer authorship. However, we have found that some reviews, some really important reviews, have got really badly out of date. And we now have additional funding from NIHR to manage some reviews, high priority reviews, in-house. The prioritisation was performed formally, involving a number of different stakeholders, including consumer organisations, and that was really helpful. So some of the really important reviews we make sure are up to date because we have the ability to manage that in-house. I've mentioned randomised trials versus other types of scientific data. Logistically, it's quite difficult for the editorial team dealing with this huge workload, and there sometimes are difficult decisions about balancing the importance of new reviews versus updating existing but important reviews, and what are important topics and what are less important topics. So finally, just want to acknowledge the fantastic job that my colleagues do. This is our editorial meeting in 2009. Sonia Henderson is the managing editor of the group, and she's based in Liverpool and does a fantastic job. Metin is at WHO, Justice Hoffmar, Caroline Crowther, Jacques Alfirovich is in Liverpool with me. Jill Geit is a consumer person, works with the National Childbirth Trust, has worked with us on some key reviews, but again is taking on a role of coordinating consumer input. Simon Gates, statistician, Fran Kelly works in Liverpool, Lilia Julie is an editor, Ellen Hodnett I've mentioned, Jodie Dodd is from Adelaide, another editor. So all of these people do a kind of fantastic job, and so we've achieved a great deal, but only because of the efforts of the editorial team and also the very many review authors around the world who would do such a great job. Thanks very much for